Hey everyone, and welcome. Today I'm really excited to be sitting down with Frank Klepacki, who's the audio director at Petroglyph Games and the senior composer from the now very late Westwood Studios. So how's it going, man?
Going great.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, no, thanks very much for. I want to say coming on, but it's not really a show; it's just an interview. But thanks for sitting down with me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, these days in the lockdown thing, right? This is how we're doing everything. So,
Yeah, exactly. Everything's an online meeting now. So, for the benefit
exactly.
of those watching who maybe don't know kind of what you do, what's like a day in the life or a back of the box reading of an audio director do?
Well, basically, audio director's role is just to, for me personally, it's to oversee all aspects of audio that gets put into video games, and that includes music, that includes sound design, that includes voiceovers, that includes technical implementation, how it interacts with the game, interfacing with our engineers, and discussing the best way to implement something, and how sound should, it theoretically play back for the game players, for the end user experience, and utilize technology that we have in order to pull off what is the most convincing and um, game informative audio experience that we can.
Mm. So it's very like all facets really. It's not just making music.
Yeah, I mean, music's probably the thing that I'm most known for, but I do all of it, and I love all of it equally. It gives you the chance to use different parts of your brain for certain aspects of the job. So if you do one thing for a long time, you start getting a little bit burnout. You can switch to another mode and say, okay, I'm just gonna stop working on music for a while. I'm gonna switch to sound effects. I'm gonna switch to the technical part of it and just try to get things to work the way that I want, and that allows your focus to give the other creative side a rest, and it's still got creative aspects to it in that sense too. I'm just saying, like, it's a different way of thinking, so it gives you a good break, and then when you come back to it, then you're a little more refreshed and you can get new ideas.
Mm. So it's quite a bit varied from, I guess, yeah, it was a long time ago at this point, but being a composer, as you were under an audio director at that point at Westworld, I presume.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was part of an audio team at Westwood, and so we had my audio director Paul and lead sound designer Dwight, and I did just music really, but I did help out now and again with some auxiliary stuff for them when they needed it, whether it was voiceover stuff or coming up with some sounds for something if I could contribute or whatever. So we all helped each other out when we needed to, and it was a pretty well oiled machine. I mean, we were cranking out stuff, left and right.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of that, obviously we have Command and Conquer Remastered out very soon, so 5th of June, so not long away at all. And obviously that's being headed up by Petroglyph. Um, and a big portion of what people remember about those, well, really all Command and Conquer games, but especially those earlier ones, is the soundtracks, which obviously you made. So, like, what's it like going back? Did you ever think you'd be working on a Command and Conquer game, ever again?
No, it's really been a surreal experience. It's one of those things where, like, you're trying to, well, not trying, I should say, you're reminded of the mindset that you had 25 years ago, and the things that you did, and how everything gelled together. Like, and for me, it was definitely not only a trip down memory lane, but uh, I put on a different hat as an audio director this time because I'm involved with making sure all of the rest of the sound in the remasters is measuring up to everything. I'm essentially paying homage to my former team that I worked with, my former audio director and lead sound designer, and so I'm trying to do their work justice to bring that up to the quality level that we're putting into this. Everything is upresed, and full audio quality now. So how to best accomplish that was something I really wanted to make sure I was doing justice to, and make sure it matched up to legacy as much as possible, that the experience that gamers remember, but now in a obviously higher quality format.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, speaking more generally about the project, like, what was it when you first heard about it? Did it come through like more personally, or is it kind of through a petroglyph kind of contact?
Well, it certainly it kind of all happened at once. It was I mean, Petroglyph definitely was contacted to bring that into into life.
Mm.
To because we have former Westwood devs at Petroglyph, and specifically Joe Bostic, who's the co-creator of the game. Um, and we have Steve Tall, who's also one of the partners at Petroglyph, was one of the original engineers on the project. So his actual like code is there, and his notes to himself are in there. So it's been fun hearing their experiences as they dived in to the code and into the game, and tried to restructure it for modern operating system and all of that. So yeah, it's that all came about where they were contacted to develop, and of course that involved bringing me on board to make sure that the soundtrack was going to get its due for the higher quality experience. And and there's things that were discovered along the way that we've got bonus content included with the collection. So that was kind of fun to be able to come across and figure out a way to include it. And of course, I have to really give a lot of credit to Jim Vasella, our producer at Electronic Arts, who was super passionate about Command and Conquer, and had worked on some previous CNC titles that EA did, like CNC3 and Kane's Wrath, and those were well done
Mm.
games in the franchise. So obviously, it came from a real place of wanting to make great games in the franchise to continue on his behalf. So the fact that he started the whole thing really with talking to the community and asking them about it and what their thoughts were, and kind of uh, created a council that was part of the development process from day one. All of that was really a great idea, and give him a lot of credit for taking that on, and wanting to do this in the best uh, authentic way as possible by bringing in Petroglyph, bringing myself in, and the community council of diehard CNC guys who've been there since forever, this whole time, and in fact keeping the memory of that alive. So it's been really cool, and an endearing process in that respect.
Mm. Yeah, but it's cool hearing that, like, all sides of it are all in. Really, everyone's really excited, which sounds awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm interested in the actual kind of remastering process of game soundtracks specifically. So, like, when you get the job, you're like, okay, we're gonna bring however many songs it is, 50 plus songs into HD quality, bring it up. Like, how does that process work? Do you re-record a lot of tracks? Do you just kind of upsample them? Like, how does that work?
So the original games, all of them, um, the the concept of using streaming audio files was new at that time. It was brand new. The only other game we did just before CNC, or around the same time, was the Legend of Kyrandia 3, that actually had streaming audio in it as well. MP3 wasn't a thing yet, so we were using WAV files. But in WAV files, for those who don't know, is the natural format that you start with for CD quality. But because of the space that it takes up, I mean, an uncompressed audio WAV file, an album's worth, would take up an entire compact disc, right? You've got like 12 songs or so that would usually eat up a whole CD. A compact disc was also a new format that we were delivering video games on at that time, which had just been used for audio and was starting to be used for data. And so therefore we had data and audio now combined, and movie sequences and all this. We just crammed all this stuff onto the disc. And so the audio format was a compressed WAV file. I should say downsampled WAV file, not really compressed, but compressed for our how we did things with getting the size of the game to fit. But it was at 22K, which is half of the quality of CD quality. and mono instead of stereo, which means one channel instead of two. So that was how the original games shipped, with the music and sounds and everything else. So now, obviously, we have the capability of having high quality audio streaming. Games take up so much space now, and people, it's just an expectation now that you're gonna get gigs and gigs of
Yeah.
of data for a game to download and install and play. So now we can take advantage of that, and it's insane how much stuff this takes up, how much space it takes up. So ultimately, yeah, we're using everything at full high quality CD quality, the way that it was mastered and intended, and in fact remastered, meaning that I've actually gone back to the source mixes that I did back then from the original digital audio tapes, and made that now into a cohesive and consistent sounding soundtrack and sound effects remastering across all of the games. So which means the consistency is not just from game to game, but through the entire collection.
Right. Right, that's awesome. Is it kind of funny going back to your old work? Do you ever like look at it and think like, oh man, like I'd do this so differently now? Like what was I thinking doing it this way?
Well, it's not a fair question, because I mean the technology is just leaps and bounds shifted.
Sure.
But the way that I worked back then is very different from how we work now, or any composer or sound designer would work now. Because back then, again, technology was just on the edge of turning a corner for how things are done. An example of that, for example, digital audio tape was kind of the thing at the time in the 90s, in the early to mid 90s. And I started off trying to utilize that technology to do the soundtracks. So as I would finish them, I would send multi-track, which means every individual track that is going to mix together. I would send that to 24 tracks worth of digital audio tape, or ADATs as we called them back then. They were like super VHS tapes, and they could record 8 tracks each. So you chain 3 of them together, and you have 24 track system. That was kind of a big deal back then. Anyway, I started off doing that, and the quality was there and everything was cool, but the problem was a workflow issue. I was asked to often edit or change or redo a mix based on feedback that I would get from either audio director or team, or if we were going to do a trailer version of a song or whatever. So I would have to go back and re-record everything in real time, and then remix it again, and then put it down to the 2-track DAT tapes, and then resubmit for approval. And I was just like, this is going to take me forever at this rate. I'm not enjoying this workflow. So I had to figure out a way to be more iterative and quicker. And the way that I did that was I said, okay, you know what? Forget about the 24-track digital audio recording. I'm just going to go straight to 2-track digital recording. I'm just going to do a mix on the fly as is. But how do you solve being able to track live guitars, or audio or samples or things that I want to put into these songs? Well, instead I used samplers, and samplers were hardware units where you would sample snippets of audio and play them back via MIDI. So what I did was I would sample phrases of me playing guitar and sample the sound effects, whatever it was I'm putting in, and I laid them all out on a keyboard, had it triggered by the MIDI sequencer, and that way I could hear it back, in real time, and edit a song in like no time, and then just immediately remix it back to 2-track. So that became the way that I worked for several years after that, because of that iteration time that was saved. So that was a big difference versus now, where you can just have your software with everything in it, audio, MIDI, sounds, it's all there. It's in you load it up and it's ready to go, and it's already mixed. So a lot of those steps have been reduced, and again, better iteration on what we're able to do, and of course the quality of instruments and samples and synthesizers and things that we have available today is leaps and bounds above what we had back then too. But I made the best of the hardware and sounds that I had available, and I was always trying to stay on the cutting edge of what was coming out. I was like, oh, I think I can really make use of this, or this gives me more bang for the buck, more sounds than the previous competitors and all of that. So it was something that it was an exciting time.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds like it. I'm sure there are a lot of things like that that would take hours or even longer that can be done now and just like the click of a finger, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to talk a bit about the. So I've heard there's some new music coming recorded from you and the Tiberian Sons. And I
Yeah.
wanted to kind of see, because obviously you guys performed at Magfest last year. Um,
Hmm.
and like those new tracks, are they brand new or are they kind of new ones or like existing ones from throughout the years?
So the tracks that we did, we basically recorded in the studio environment our actual set that we performed at Magfest, all of those songs, and when we added a new one that we didn't put into the set, which was "Just Do It Up." That one
Mm.
was actually a request that came from the community because Jim had posted in Reddit, "Hey, what's everybody's top favorite songs? And let's see what the top 10 are." And so we, no surprise, it was basically everything that we played. But that one was the only one that was in there in the top 10 that was not included in our set. So that became the track that we put in as an additional bonus to that. That was a new thing. So that was fun to do. And yeah, and the guys did a fantastic job. Of course, they're stellar musicians. I'm happy to be able to collaborate with them and perform with them and as a unit and do that show because it's something that I've had in mind to do for a long time. And
Mm.
finally the stars kind of aligned and the right opportunity and the right audience and just the whole thing was it was a good time to do it. um, of course, I would have loved to have done it sooner, but it was just one of those things where like I never really knew like how am I gonna put this together, and how does a show that's related to video games there's other like orchestra shows that I've obviously done things with video games live and that sort of thing, but this was different. This was more of a rock band setting, and I wanted to do special arrangements for that environment, and so it came off really well. I was very overly happy with it, and everybody at EA and Petroglyph, they're stoked on the new versions with myself and the Tiberian Sons. Those guys did a great job, and like I said, it's going to be a nice bonus to have because a lot of people were asking in the comments of the videos and stuff after the fact, man, when are you going to put out an album of this, or all of that. And so we just kind of kept tight-lipped about it because we knew that we were working on this already. uh, so and it's great to see that it's been announced and it's part of the collection as a bonus, and obviously you have the option to be able to hear those versions while you're playing, customizable jukebox and all
Mm.
of that. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Had you kind of heard of those guys before, like a while before the show? Because I know they had done Magfest already, right? Like a few years before
Yeah.
when you guys had done it.
Yeah, so they were already their own band. They had existed prior and did their own thing. They didn't necessarily just play Command and Conquer stuff.
Mm.
They of course did a version of Hell March, which was just way over the top and insanity with crazy orchestration and all. I mean, and, Tony Dickinson is the leader of that, and he basically came to me years and years ago when he was working on that, when he first started working on that remix, and I was getting my feedback on it because he wanted it to be amazing, and wanted to just get it straight from the composer what I thought, and I told him, and I was like, dude, I was like, this is already incredible. I was like, just I would tweak your mix a little bit and I'll give you some tips on that, but other than that I think you're great. And so he ended up winning his remix competition that he submitted that to, and then he of course did a lot of other game related remixes that were of the same style and caliber of quality and insanity. And so they got together as a band to perform that stuff, and so they performed that at Magfest themselves. And of course, Tony's the one who told me about Magfest to begin with. I hadn't heard of it prior to them performing there years prior to putting this together. But what prompted me to put this together was just kind of hearing it from a few different people that this would be something that I would be really into and should go check out at the very least, just to go and see it. And I was like, okay, well, Tony had told me about it first. And then a mutual composer friend of mine, Alex Brandon, had also hit me up and told me I should go. And then my friend and one of my all-time influences is Vince DiCola. He performed at it the year prior and told me how wonderful that audience was and what a great experience he had. And I said, okay, well, you know what? I've got to go. I've got to check this out. So I started off with the idea that I would just attend and check it out. But as I spoke with the person that was in charge of the bookings and all of that, I just kind of ran the idea by him that not only would I be interested in going, but I might be able to even put something together as a performance. We think about that. It could be a potential headline thing. It's never been done before. Like yeah, we'll give you a headline slot. So I'm like, okay. So now I've got to put together the band. So I figured, well, it only makes sense to call the Tiberian Sons because this is kind of how I got connected with it in the first place. And I already knew that, based on their performance that I watched, that they were, amazing. So, what better combination to have a group of guys who are not only incredible musicians, but are, fans of games and fans of Command and Conquer specifically, that all tied together really well. And then, of course, I cannot forget to mention Nate Horsfall, who was our videographer for the whole thing. He, put together all of the videos and backdrops to our whole performance single-handedly, and wasn't as familiar with CNC until we started working together, and then he just developed a whole other appreciation for it after the fact. So, that team of guys, we all put that together. We all put a bunch of love and passion into it and created something that really moved a significant audience. I was, again, pleasantly surprised at that, to know that we filled a ballroom to its capacity of like 5,000 people. And they were just all super into it and chanting and yelling and clapping and the whole thing. It was a full on, rock concert,
Yeah.
basically. And exceeded all my expectations. And so I'm definitely looking forward to doing more of that. We were planning to go and perform in Russia actually this month of May 2020. But with everything that's happened worldwide with the coronavirus and all of that, that got postponed. So we're hoping to be able to still go end of July, but we'll see. What everything's just sort of a wait and see what state of things are going on worldwide at that point. And but we hope to go. We really want to go and perform there and do more shows. Hopefully, that'll lead us to doing stuff in Europe and other stuff around the States. It's just one of those things where this kind of halted so much live entertainment. It's affected everything in that industry. But basically, long story, that's how it all kind of came together. And it's something we hope to do moving forward.
Yeah, but it's really awesome to hear, and it's really cool to see it like in the game too. Like, I know the original Command Conquers had a jukebox that was obviously a lot less featured, I guess you call it, than what's coming in the remaster. That's really cool to see that come through because you'd think that would be something that might get lost in a remaster, But it's awesome to see that, and it's kind of a nice homage, isn't it, to all the music from the games.
Yeah, that was a big deal to a lot of people. Everybody loved the box. They wanted to select their favorite songs to go and do battle to. We put that thing on steroids. We, myself and Mike Legg, engineer and president of Petroglyph, he works with me closely on a lot of audio related programming and features, and he's really passionate about it. He's a great voice for it as well. So whenever I'm in the midst of creating content, he's like working on the engineering side of it, and he'll point out stuff like, hey, it would be great if we had this or that, or this is missing, just wanted to give you a heads up, so he's been really great at working with me very directly with regard to audio implementation across all of our games. And so he was also really into doing the jukebox, and we had a lot of discussion about it and all of the features. We just threw everything into it. So it's like a media player basically, but for the game specifically. And so you can customize it however you want. You can create your own playlists, you can choose from all of the songs from all of the games for any of the games that you're playing, and that was another really fun thing to be able to do as part of a bonus to the collection, and just have everything be kind of cross compatible in that sense.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'm really excited to try it out personally. I'm sure a lot of people are. So, I mean, at this point, like, does it kind of feel funny working on a Command and Conquer Petroglyph? Because it's kind of a bit poetic, right? With, like, Westwood closing and the Petroglyph kind of, rising from the ashes, as you might call it. Um,
Yeah.
like, how
Yeah,
does that
it's
feel?
it feels good. It feels, I mean, those guys are like family to me, the whole team. I mean, we work really well together. I've always said that it's not just about, working with, ex Westwood devs. It's also the people that make up Petroglyph as a whole. They all bring their talents and their uh, charisma and personality to, it's just great to work with so many different people that are great at what they do. It's kind of like it's a small but mighty development team because everybody does wears multiple hats, and so because of that, it's a really unique experience. And it reminds me actually going way back to when I first started at Westwood. Westwood, when I first started, was only about 30 people uh, in the early 90s, and grew from there. So it gives me that same sense of like, ragtag, we're gonna go make some fun cool stuff, and the way that we all work together, it feels like home. It feels like, that aspect never left, in terms of a company culture. And uh, and I feel real fortunate about that because not everywhere is like that. Everywhere's got their own way of operating and their own, company cultures. And so the fact that I've been able to stay in Las Vegas and do this, this whole time is pretty unique.
Mm. It's like you never left.
What's that?
It's like you never left.
Yeah.
I mean, just like, with the whole team kind of working on this, what's kind of the vibe of, in development? Is it quite optimistic, like for, Command and Conquer in general, or does it feel like more of like a victory lap almost, like kind of bringing it back like one last time kind of thing?
It just feels like, I don't know. It's hard to describe. It's like I said, it's just kind of surreal to be back in that headspace, and just be in this development process for the past, year and a half now
Mm.
of, working on something that you did 25 years ago, but bringing it into, a modern day setting. Well, I should say a higher quality setting for today. And that it's been fun, it because there's just things that have happened along the way that, you just kind of smile about or laugh about, or go, oh wow, we actually don't have this, so we've got to really figure out a clever way of redoing it to work. so, so there's been some challenges and things along the way, but it's been really fun, and just to be coming back to it. One thing that I think a lot of fans who've, been around for as long as the games have, and stuck with them, whether they're part of the communities, or just really into, having a chance to play these again all these years later, is the fact that, they are going to get a higher quality version, and especially the soundtrack. A lot of people have been asking for the entire complete soundtrack like forever, and I'm just like, it's not up to me, like, so finally, now that we're doing this, that's gonna happen. And with the pre-orders that that were announced, a while back and everything, it is going to finally have a complete
Mm.
collection that's available.
Yeah, it's really nice to see. Kind of have it all kind of tied up nicely in a bow, like it looks good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're stoked on it.
And I just wanted to say too, if people want to, because you do stuff outside of Petroglyph, right? You have your own, solo stuff, and obviously you do some
Yeah, I
performances.
do. I do my own albums, and collaborate with different musicians for different things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm working on an EP right now that I'm going to release fairly soon. Um, just during this whole lockdown quarantine thing, even though I'm still working full time from home, when I'm done with that I'm sitting around the house going, okay, I can't go anywhere. So what else am I gonna do? I'm gonna pick up a guitar. I'm gonna pick up the bass. I'm gonna get behind my drums. I'm gonna start making some fun stuff that I feel like doing at that time, just to, keep myself sane, for lack of a better word. But so that's been fun. I've also got a complete metal album in the works. I've had that in the works for a few years now, and it's been on and off, but I've been able to finish that in the final stages of getting that mastered, and that'll come out probably later in the year after CNC's out and all of that, because the focus right now is on the CNC remaster. So that's been largely what we're looking forward to getting out there. And again, just we're really excited about having worked on that and bringing a really high quality version and complete version and so much fun bonus stuff for the fans, and hopefully that will just keep the life of it going and keep the community engaged, and take it from there.
Yeah, awesome, man. I'm really excited to play it.
Awesome, man. Well, yeah, maybe I'll see you online sometime.
Sounds good. Thanks, man.
All right.